All right, let's dive right into this. Welcome to This Explainer, where we are unpacking the deeply unsettling, intricately layered 2024 psychological horror film Speak No Evil. Now, directed by James Watkins, this is actually a remake of a heavily acclaimed 2022 Danish film. And, while it definitely operates as a terrifying, edge-of-your-seat thriller on the surface, at its core, it's really this fascinating, almost surgical examination of social etiquette. It totally explores how our fundamental desire to just be polite and, avoid awkwardness can literally become a lethal trap. So grab a seat, get comfortable, though honestly you probably won't be comfortable for long, and let's see exactly how this nightmare unfolds. So picture this. Would you actually go to a total stranger's house for the holidays? It's a surprisingly relatable scenario, right? Our story kicks off with an American couple, Ben and Louise, who are on this gorgeous, relaxing vacation in Italy with their young daughter Agnes. While they're just lounging by the pool, they strike up this fast, seemingly perfect friendship with an intensely charismatic British guy named Paddy, his wife Ciara, and their really introverted son Ant. The families bond, they share meals, they take in the scenery. Everything is great. But when the vacation ends, Paddy sends Ben an invitation to come visit their remote farmhouse. And against Louise's better judgment, they agree to go. It seems like a simple, totally harmless vacation friendship. But as you'll see, it is the perfectly laid bait for a terrifying psychological trap.
What's really fascinating here is the stark contrast between our two couples. They are polar opposites. On one side, we have Ben and Louise. They kind of represent the passive, modern couple. Ben is struggling with his career right now. He's feeling a bit emasculated, just looking for a change of pace. Louise is fiercely protective of their daughter Agnes, and she's incredibly mindful of boundaries. Though, she constantly bites her tongue just to keep the peace. Then, on the other side, we have Paddy and Ciara, and they are assertive, uninhibited, and completely unapologetic. Paddy claims to be a doctor, he rejects societal norms, he hates social media, and presents himself as this primal, free-spirited alpha. But he pushes boundaries constantly, always under the guise of just being friendly. It's a classic clash of personalities, but it is deliberately designed to make the Americans feel inadequate and super eager to please.
Okay, so Ben and Louise arrive at Paddy and Ciara's home, and right away the vibe is just off. It's this incredibly isolated farmhouse set deep in the woods, literally miles away from the main city, and immediately the hosts put them in these weird situations, like the British couple takes the nice master bedroom, while their own son, Ant, is shoved up into this tiny, super uncomfortable attic space, which by the way is where they also expect the guest's daughter, Agnes, to sleep. It's rural, it's totally disconnected, and it's completely controlled by the hosts. This physical isolation perfectly mirrors the psychological isolation Ben and Louise are about to endure.
Man, from the second they unpack, it just builds into an absolute avalanche of discomfort. And we're not talking about minor faux pas here. We are talking about aggressive microtransgressions. First up, Paddy intentionally cooks a giant roast duck for dinner, knowing full well that Louise is a strict vegetarian. He even forcibly feeds her a bite, totally weaponizing the awkwardness at the table so she won't cause a scene. Then, when Louise mentions having a sore neck, Paddy insists on examining her, crossing serious physical boundaries with inappropriate touching, all while hiding behind his whole "I'm a medical professional" persona. And then, during this harmless little dance routine, Paddy gets completely enraged when his son Ant makes a tiny mistake and aggressively hurls an apple right at him. Step by step, Paddy is just testing the waters, figuring out exactly how much abuse this polite American couple will tolerate without fighting back.
And this brings us to one of the most frustrating, yet deeply, painfully human moments of the whole story. After finding Agnes sleeping in Paddy and Ciara's own bed in the middle of the night, Louise has absolutely had it. She and Ben pack up the car, they sneak out at dawn, and they are free. They did it! But halfway down the road, Agnes realizes she forgot her beloved stuffed animal, Hoppy. She throws a massive tantrum. And Ben, totally paralyzed by this mix of weak parenting and a desperate desire not to overreact, literally turns the car around. They drive right back to the creepy house just for a teddy bear. It just perfectly hits the nail on the head regarding their fatal flaw, their total inability to firmly say no and prioritize their family's actual safety over politeness and temporary convenience. Well, that terrible decision leads us right to the film's midpoint twist. While all the adults are distracted, Ant, who by the way has been desperately trying to warn Agnes this whole time, takes her down to a locked cellar. And what they find is absolutely chilling. The cellar is just packed. It's filled with suitcases, wallets, toys, and watches that clearly belong to countless different people. But the real horror? It's a photo album. They open it, and page after page reveals pictures of Patty and Ciara on holiday with different couples and different children, and the horrifying realization finally sets in. Ant is not their biological son. He is just the child of their previous victims. So, the absolutely crucial point to understand here is their exact methodology. Patty and Ciara aren't just weird, boundary-pushing hosts. They are methodical, seasoned serial killers. And their routine is chillingly efficient. Step 1. Target a passive, polite couple while on holiday. Step 2. Invite them to the isolated farmhouse. Step 3. Slowly, painfully break down their boundaries. Step 4. Steal their child to basically play house with for a year or two. And finally, brutally murder the parents. When they eventually get bored of the current kid, they just go back on holiday and start the whole sick cycle all over again. And Agnes? Yeah, she's their next target.
Which brings us to the number 0. Remember early on in the story when Patty explains that Ant is super quiet because he has a rare medical condition that gave him a small tongue? Actually, scratch that. As Ben eventually discovers when Ant opens his mouth, the number of tongues Ant actually has is 0. The serial killer couple literally cut out the poor boy's tongue so he could never scream for help or warn the next family. It is a visceral, completely horrifying reveal that instantly skyrockets the stakes to life or death.
So, when Ben and Louise finally realize what's happening and try to escape for good, they're captured. Their car tires are slashed, they're held at gunpoint, and they're forced to completely empty their bank accounts. And in this moment of just sheer, utter desperation, Ben looks up at Patty and asks the question that we are all screaming at the screen, "Why are you doing this?" And Patty's response? It's basically the thematic anchor of the entire story. He just looks at him and says, "Because you let us." Boom. He didn't use brute force to get them into the house. He didn't kidnap them in the dead of night. He used their own manners against them. They were so terrified of being seen as rude, they willingly walked right into their own execution.
But thankfully, unlike all those previous victims in the photo album, Ben and Louise finally hit their absolute breaking point. The third act of the film shifts gears completely, going from this tense, slow-burn psychological thriller into a full-blown, chaotic hostage situation. They realize, hey, playing by the rules of polite society means we're going to die. So to survive against Patty, Ciara, and their surprise accomplice, a local restaurant owner named Chef Mike, the Americans have to completely drop their manners and start fighting dirty. It becomes this raw, desperate, totally unpredictable battle for survival.
And let me tell you, the timeline of this final fight is just pure adrenaline. Louise emerges as the absolute MVP of this sequence, for sure. While frantically searching the house, she finds a bottle of sulfuric acid, and when Patty opens a cupboard, she throws it directly into his face. Ben, finally digging deep and finding his courage, actually manages to overpower the accomplice, Chef Mike, taking him out with a hammer. And then, in this incredibly poetic, full-circle moment, when Patty corners them and tries to grab Agnes, the young girl pulls out the very same sedative needle Patty tried to use on her earlier and jams it right into his leg, bringing the giant down.
But you know what? The climax doesn't actually belong to the American parents. It belongs entirely to Ant. With Patty totally incapacitated on the ground from the sedative, Ben kinda hesitates to finish him off. But Ant, the boy whose tongue was stolen, whose real parents were murdered, and who suffered just unimaginable abuse, he steps right up. He picks up a massive, heavy rock and crushes Patty's face, screaming out all of his pain and trauma in this incredibly visceral, cathartic release. The oppressors are finally defeated, and Ben and Louise take Ant with them as they get in the car and finally drive away from that farmhouse. Now, this brilliantly illustrates a massive departure that this 2024 film takes from its source material, because the 2024 Hollywood remake gives us this triumphant, empowering ending, right? The victims fight back, and they survive. But the original 2022 Danish film, wow, it is incredibly bleak. In that version, the parents never actually fight back. They are taken to a quarry and literally stoned to death by Patty and Ciara. The killers win the whole thing, and they successfully cut out Agnes's tongue, doomed to just repeat the cycle all over again. It is a devastating gut punch of an ending that arguably drives that central theme of passive politeness home in a much, much more punishing way.
And honestly, you want to know what makes this entire narrative even creepier? Its origin. Christian Tafdrup, the director of that original 2022 film, actually based this on a true story. Well, partially at least. While on holiday, he and his family met a slightly weird but, very friendly foreign couple. Later on, that same couple actually invited Tafdrup's family to come visit them in their home country. His wife firmly refused, immediately setting a boundary. But Tafdrup's mind just started wandering. He kept asking himself the chilling question, what if we actually went? And from that one simple, relatable what if, this entire horrifying nightmare was born.
Okay, before we wrap this up, there is one fascinating thematic mystery left totally unresolved in the film. During that chaotic final battle, as Sierra is backed into a corner and begging for her life, she screams out to Luis that she is actually Patty's very first victim. This throws the chilling concept of Stockholm Syndrome right into the mix. It's a psychological condition where a hostage actually develops a trauma bond with their captor over time. If Sierra really was kidnapped years ago as a child or a teenager, the endless abuse and isolation could have completely warped her mind, turning her from a helpless victim into a compliant participant in Patty's horrific crimes.
Let's actually look at the facts here objectively. On the side of victim, we know for a fact there is a significant age gap between Patty and Sierra, which totally fits the grooming profile. Furthermore, the film makes it very evident that Patty physically abuses her behind closed doors. But, on the side of accomplice, her actions are pretty undeniable. She actively helps kidnap these children, she acts as the warm, maternal lure to make the visiting mothers feel safe, and in the final act, she literally picks up a shotgun and actively tries to murder Ben and Louise. Even the director noted that their relationship contained this dark, abusive side, but also a very genuine, twisted sort of love.
Which leaves us hanging with this really brilliant psychological puzzle. So, what do you think? Was Sierra truly Patty's first victim, just tragically trapped in a cycle of abuse she couldn't possibly escape? Or was she just a cold-blooded, murderous accomplice, lying through her teeth in her final moments to try and save her own skin? The movie brilliantly leaves it entirely up to you to decide. It really forces us to examine the blurred lines between coercion and complicity, and it serves as a pretty stark reminder that sometimes the absolute most dangerous monsters are the ones who invite us in with a warm smile and a polite cup of tea. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and hey, next time you're on vacation, maybe think twice before handing out your home address.